So right now we're at the process of starting the entire planning of a REVEGO pocket system. From here, we're going to get all the data that we need for the application that we have that we're going to design, and we're going to bring it into our product configurator. To get to the product configurator on our website at blum.com, it will be at the top right corner. From there, it goes into our E-Services platform, and I get to choose in our product configurator many different applications, but right in front of me is the pocket systems. And I will do a configuration now, and it will go into the actual starting process of getting into the REVEGO plan. So as you can see here, I am looking at the REVEGO option. I will click there, and what we're going to be doing here is we have three choices. I'm going to be doing a freestanding installation, but we also have the ability to do a niche installation. So if I had a run of cabinets and I wanted to put it in between those cabinets, I can do so. And now we have a third and new way of doing things, which is by just doing the front width and the number of fronts I want to put in. So if I had a series of panels and I wanted to keep matching them up across a wall, I can actually say, okay, I do have these fixed panel sizes and I want to work with them. But I'm going to just start with the freestanding installation for what we have in our application that we're doing today. So here it's telling me right off the bat, it says I'm going to have a bunch of optional opportunities to pass over when I'm going into the system, because as I start entering data, when I have an optional place, I can leave it blank because the next information is going to start backfilling that data. So here, when I look at the screen, it's giving me basically the three core pieces. I'm looking for width, height, and depth. And with every application, right below it, it says I have a minimum and a maximum dimension that I can fulfill with any application on the REVEGO system. So I'm going to enter in a width of 2088 millimeters. Unfortunately, all we do is millimeters, but if you look at the top of the page here, we also have a conversion calculator right there. So if you are working from a plan that is in inches, it's very simple to add that dimension in there and get the metric equivalent. So the internal height within the system that we're going to be working with roughly is going to be, for us, it's going to be 2200. And keep in mind that I'm just going through the data just to give you a walkthrough on what is required and what's going to come out of the system. When you do your own information or your own application, all the data in your drawings are going to be entered in here. So it could be of any dimension within our specifications that you can enter. So for here, I'm going to enter an internal depth of, I'm going to put in 750 millimeters, hit enter. And as I get into all the data that's filled in, I will get an orange next button, which means I can now go to the next page. So with that dimension that I entered in previously, these are the options available. So I can do a REVEGO Duo and an Uno, or reverse it and do an Uno and a Duo, or I can, for this instance, actually put two Duo units in here. For this one, I'm going to do a Duo on the left and an Uno on the right. And I have the option of doing with or without a toe kick. A majority of the applications we see today are without a toe kick and going right down to the floor. And I'm going to be asking about what my pocket is going to be with regards to the material that I use. And for a default 3/4 inch material is going to be 19 millimeters. So I've already got it pre-entered in from another application or another plan that I'd done previously. But as you can see, there's a minimum requirement of between 15 and 19 millimeters. So from there, I go next. So when I look at the gap information now I'm getting a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of the application. So when I look at this here, I've got between 0 and 6 millimeters. One of the things to be aware of when I look at this is the zooming in of this screen about the data, what I'm after. I'm actually asking for the gap against the vertical panel. On the top, I have a 10 millimeter plate. So when we're talking about a 0 mil gap, I'm not talking about 0 mil to the top, I'm talking about 0 mil to here. But keep in mind, I'll have a 10 mil space at the top. So I am going to put in 0. And the same thing goes with the bottom. On a to the floor unit, I have the gap here between 7 and 13. But the REVEGO system demands a minimum of 10 millimeters at the floor to accommodate any maybe questionable floor leveling. But I can also go to a maximum of 13 millimeters on the gap. But when I look at what it is it's asking me for on the bottom of the system, it's again doing it from the vertical panel. But at the bottom, I will have a 3 mil gap. So that minimum of 7 millimeters is actually going to be 10. Now, not to be too concerned about minimums, I can go up to 5/8 of an inch or 16 millimeters of space at the bottom. So for this instance, I'm going to put in 7, and that will give me my 10 at the bottom. So now I have a what we call a fixed shelf, and that is a shelf that's going to help encompass the application inside and also hide for me the track that the REVEGO runs on. So this will be also 19 mil material because I'm going to be running that material thickness throughout. And you can see with the zoom in what it's talking about. So below here would be cabinetry or whatever it is in the application, and that's the panel there. The next one is the track cover panel thickness. This is the panel that's going to hide the rail in front of my application and also attach the Duo's magnetic catch tube. That too will be 19 millimeters. So here, because I've already predetermined some gaps and width and other height dimensions, I'm getting some autofill here, and that's some of the optional data that was included there in the beginning. So I'm not really having to change anything, so I'm getting all this in here. So once what we're seeing here is I have the orange button next to go, so I'll hit next. And now we see optional entries for width, height, and depth again. It's just more of a reminder. Again, now I can turn these off, but when I turn them off, I'm not going to get maybe some warnings that may be of use for me in other applications. So I'll just keep having those pop-ups show up. So now for the gaps that I'm going to create, I have the opportunity between 1 and 4 millimeters of gap. So I'm going to be using 2. And with this portion of the screen, I have to hit enter at every turn. So 2, 2, and it does double it up from 2 to 2 to 4 between the doors, but I'm going to change that to 2 as well. And now from here, I've got an option with regards to demanding how wide I want to have that panel on my Duo between 716.5 and 747.5 in millimeters. I'm going to create that as 720. I'm going to go kind of in the middle. Actually, let's try 725. I'll hit enter. And then because I've now done the 725, it's equaled it out to 725, and it's now done my Duo door automatically, or sorry, my Uno door automatically. So now I have the next button available, and I'm going to process information. So now I'm talking about the door thickness. I have the opportunity to go between 18 and 26 millimeters. One thing to be aware of is that at 23 millimeters and beyond, we are actually planning door buffers. If I'm going to be doing anything under that, I won't be doing the door buffers. And what those door buffers do is as we get a thicker door, it's getting closer and closer to the hardware within the pocket. These buffers are going to guide the door away from that hardware, preventing any scratches on our fine finished doors. So for our instance, we're actually running a 19 millimeter door. So I'm going to just continue with that. And now I'm getting some fixed numbers here. This is my what we call nominal length, and that is my front to back application for the aluminum profiles that is going to carry the door within the pocket. So I'm getting a detail of 675 millimeters on the nominal length. And when I see the door protrusion, I'm actually getting an opportunity here to make some changes between 24 and 290 millimeters. Now, I don't want my door to be sticking out 290 millimeters. I want to keep it as minimum as possible. The minimum application for a REVEGO is actually 7 millimeters, but based on the pocket depth, the door width, it's just a matter of math. And here it's saying I'm going to get a minimum of 24 or 65 millimeters. 65 millimeters being just under 3 inches. So I'm going to keep it there. And now when I get into the pocket for the Uno, I'm going to have a bigger protrusion here because I hadn't actually had a larger door on my Uno system. But here, if I go to the application of going to another length from 700 to 800 millimeters in our nominal length, I'm going to go from 195 down to 179. So I'm going to get, what's that, about another 16 millimeters of clearance. But when I do that change, what I'm doing is I'm going from a system that would go in without any adjustments to actually having to make some adjustments. Not a big deal, but it's just a way of gaining more or less door protrusion. So when I look here, I've also got, I'm going to start processing the back dimension. And what we're going to see here is that what happens when I put in the back thickness, it's going to create a rabbit in the process, so that when I set the back in, it's going to create the pocket make the pocket a little bit more rigid, a little bit more stable when we start to install it on site. So I'm going to go into adding a 19 millimeter back, and also too, when I'm going to enter in 19 millimeters, I may actually see a change in that protrusion number, because I may be putting such a thick back, I'm actually pushing all the hardware ahead. So I'm going to hit enter, and I'm actually now going to create a door protrusion of 194, because again, I've made a thick back and pushed it out. So I have the opportunity here to go to the next page, and this is where we see some of the optional components. And this is a inner door support, which is going to be applied to to one of the doors, and what it's going to do is rest on the toe kick, and it's going to keep the door at the bottom more rigid and not moving. Now I don't need it, it is totally an option, but we're going to plan for it to give us that ability to keep that door pretty solid at the bottom. And then one of the options that is here, but unfortunately with Canada, we run on a 110/120 system. The contact switch adapter for electrical appliances switch off. So if you're running a fridge, a stove, or anything, I believe by most standards, we have to have a cutoff, because you don't want to have a stove running or something running behind closed doors. So because this is not a system in Canada, it does still show there. Most of the cabinet makers and designers already have a system in place to put an electrical cutoff. So we're going to keep that at no. So the scuff guards, I did mention earlier that if I went beyond 22 millimeters, I would be able to see the scuff guards planned automatically. I would have no choice in the matter. Here I have the choice in the matter. So I will actually not plan those scuff guards, because I am at 19 millimeters. Now I'm looking at the system screws. So the system screws are what holds all the hardware in place. And so what we're looking at is what we call a 6x14.5 millimeter system screw. It's called a 661.1450. I don't have any, so I'm going to order some. And when I do place it, it's going to show up as 1. But as we order it, it becomes 1,000. And same thing goes with the chipboard screws, and that is actually the only time we use a wood screw in the REVEGO application. That's to hold the end caps, the top cap and the bottom cap for the pockets. And I'm going to put it as in yes, so I have the actual correct screw specified. And if I was using a thin door system or a thinner application, I do have the ability of putting in the Expando T system, but that's for another day. So when I go to next, you'll see some dots that are flashing. That means we're getting to the end.